Good evening. I'm Councilwoman Allison Pickard, the District 2 representative of the County Council. Thank you for joining us tonight for a discussion about revitalization in Glen Burnie. This is a topic I'm very passionate about. In the summer of 2019, I led a walking tour of the downtown Glen Burnie Town Center with the county executive and the Glen Burnie Improvement Association and many of the administration team, economic development. That tour kickstarted some great conversations and some even better outcomes. I would like to recognize the other elected officials and community members that are in attendance tonight. I want to say a big thank you to Bridget Smith from Congressman Sarbanes' office for attending. I believe we have Councilwoman Sarah Lacey with us tonight and Delegate Heather Bagnall. I know we have Miss Beth Nowell from the Northern Chamber of Commerce and several members of the Glen Burnie Improvement Association, as well as members of the task force that we'll be discussing tonight. Before we begin tonight's presentation, please let me introduce our County Executive, Stuart Pittman, who will talk about the Glen Burnie Revitalization Implementation Task Force. Mr. County Executive. You're muted.
All right, sorry about that. Well, thank you, Councilwoman Pickard. It actually goes back for me to before 2019, and you will remember, Allison, if I may call you that in public, you took me on a driving tour when we were both candidates for this office, and your passion was just as strong then for revitalization in Glen Burnie. And I have to say that I am as excited about this as just about anything that Anne Arundel County government has done since I took office 3 years ago. And it's because I have a passion for land use. And some people think I'm just a tree hugger and I'm not really that interested in development. But my career goes back to days when I was working with banks to get them to invest capital in neighborhoods in Chicago, then Des Moines, Iowa, and around the country to do both commercial development and housing in neighborhoods that were having trouble getting capital. And so there is no question in my mind that we can't improve the quality of people's lives if we don't have the private sector partners that build the stuff that improve the quality of our lives. And that's housing, and it's commercial spaces, and it's public spaces. So while the government is a partner in that, and we can facilitate a lot of that work, and sometimes we even build a few things or improve some things like we have at Rotary Park recently, we need to figure out how to attract the investment in the areas where we want the investment and try to make sure that the kind of development that happens is the kind of development the community wants. And that in Anne Arundel County has been the challenge, is getting the community engagement so that whoever the developers may be, when they come in, they have a welcoming community and the community that's at the table, giving them good advice about what sells and what the needs are. So that's really what this has been all about. The Glen Burnie Revitalization Bill, which is a great model for other parts of the county that Councilwoman Pickard created and moved, really does exactly that and engages the community at the front end of the process. And that's what we're doing tonight. But the task force that was created specifically for Glen Burnie, I just want to thank all of you for the time that you spent getting a consultant engaged, putting together a plan. And I'm really looking forward to seeing that plan presented tonight to residents, hear their thoughts about them, as well as a county property that again, Councilwoman Pickard identified and said, we need this to be a kind of a driver for the rest of the revitalization of the B&A Boulevard. And I would like to take it even further to the northern end into the next district with the Cromwell Station up there and do transit-oriented development up by that station and really show this county. I think this community can show this county how to do development right. So I am on board, ready, and very excited.
Thank you, County Executive. The agenda for tonight will include brief presentations from two consultants. The first presentation include the results of a redevelopment study of several blocks of downtown Glen Burnie, which will show possibilities for investment from the private sector to revitalize this area. The second presentation will include information about a request for qualifications that has been issued by the county regarding county-owned property at 7409 B&A Boulevard near the Ice House building. The third piece of tonight's presentation will include a quick overview of the redevelopment incentives available to the private sector. And finally, we'll reserve time after the presentations for question and answers. When we get to the Q&A period, I'll ask those with questions to use their raise hand function and wait to be called on. Now, as the county executive mentioned, the task force he appointed has been working very hard, and it's been great to see this engaged group of individuals come together. I've appreciated everyone's time and effort, which have yielded some great results, like the ongoing renovations at Rotary Park and the summer farmers market in the Glen Burnie Town Center Plaza. Another positive outcome of the task force was securing grant funding from the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development to do this target market study that has helped craft this revitalization plan. I'd like to introduce Tom McGilloway from Mahan Reichel, and he will walk us through a synopsis of the team's work. Tom?
Great. Thank you very much, Councilwoman. I'm going to share my screen right now. So let's see if we can do that with everyone see this. Is that good? Okay, great. Yes. So this was really a pleasure for us to work on. I'm with Mahan Reichel Associates. We're located in Baltimore. I've lived in the area for 30 some years. Traveled up and down and been to Glen Burnie many times. Our team included Arnett Muldrow Associates from South Carolina. Trip Muldrow was a resident of Glen Burnie at one time when he moved to Maryland and joined the previous firm I worked with, and then also Community Design Solutions, an architect. Together, our team works throughout the country, mainly in Main Street communities, Main Street neighborhoods of larger cities, and then small towns and downtown revitalization. So this is really exciting for us to work so close to home here. Let me see. So our project team, I want to thank our project team from the county, Lynn Miller from the Office of Planning and Zoning, and Keisha Haith from the County Economic Development Corporation. I really appreciate their guidance throughout this process. I mentioned our consultant team here that's listed above, and then also, again, many thanks to the Glen Burnie Revitalization Implementation Task Force. Has really been great. We've had several meetings with the task force, and the input was invaluable throughout the process. So I'll hit quickly the purpose of the plan. Our study area is at the intersection of Crane Highway and B&A Boulevard. And a portion of the block on the east side of Crane Highway, and then a larger portion on the west side of Crane Highway. This is the Town Center Plaza, and Arundel Community College, Rotary Park, which is included in our study area for context. So the overall purpose is really providing a framework for not only the county, but also the private sector partners to guide investment in this study area for the next 10 years and beyond. And then also that this could be a catalyst for additional investment in the broader town center area beyond our study boundary. More specifically, the plan is to, it's a framework to guide improvements. It's not dictating the improvements we're showing are illustrative, but it's to guide the actual improvements to happen. Want to provide a realistic plan, not something pie in the sky. There's been a lot of recent investment in activating the Town Center Plaza, investment in Rotary Park, and the mural on Anne Arundel Community College. We want to build upon that investment. The plan considers both short and long-term actions. This isn't going to happen overnight, but it's a framework that allows incremental implementation. The other purpose is to help provide a more cohesive town center. The Town Center Plaza is, and I'll get into this more, somewhat cut off by Crane Highway and B&A Boulevard and some of the traffic along there is in a non-pedestrian friendly environment. It's also providing a plan that the county can share with both public and private sector potential investors, and then also informing some of the county's regional plans for Glen Burnie area, that this can be incorporated into those planning efforts, and then also inform other concurrent and future redevelopment opportunities in the area, such as the second one that's on the agenda for this evening. So the planning process, just a real high level overview of this. We started actually last January and February with background review of other plans for the area to build on those, the county's comprehensive plan, series of site visits and meetings with different property owners and stakeholders. We did market analysis that built on a larger recent market analysis for the larger Glen Burnie area. Arnett Muldrow conducted a market analysis and zip code survey with participants from local businesses. And we had property owner and business owner consultations with many of the property owners in the area, and then stakeholder meetings with the task force and others in February, June, and September of 2021. So with our assessment, we have a more detailed market report. I'm just going to hit on some summary points here. The residential growth is strong, and that's expected to continue to be strong. One of the things is the housing mix in Glen Burnie is primarily limited to garden style apartments and single family residential. So there's it's worth exploring some denser options, denser multifamily, mixed use options, especially in the town center area. The area, while income levels are higher than in our market study were expected, the area still remains relatively affordable. So it's very attractive to maybe someone that want to start up with a new home or with a new starter housing investment. There's a high performing retail area, but it begs for some of the more specialty retail, specialty dining, and third places where people can gather in the evenings. That's something we heard a lot from stakeholders, places to gather, whether it's coffee shops or more sit-down restaurants, places with some outdoor gathering area, and so forth. And then, for our market data from other communities, and we'll share a little more of some examples in the presentation, is that the B&A trail could really be better promoted as an asset. Some other community examples will show you really have leveraged their bike and multi-purpose trails that have gone through their neighborhoods and really leverage those for investment in the area. Some of this is the only graph I'll show tonight, but it's a very local customer base. The primary trade area is a little over 0.5%, and the beyond the primary trade area, it's mostly in the Maryland, Baltimore, Annapolis metro area. So very localized market versus an Ellicott City, where we also work, that has a very market and high visitation from all over the country. There is some market gains in the Glen Burnie area, but Anne Arundel County overall has a leakage. And while the gains which means that the stores are selling more than consumers are buying, is really relegated to the big box uses, the automotive uses that are so prevalent in the area. And this is expected for an area like this outside of a major metropolitan areas. But where there is leakage and where there is opportunities in the town center, or for the highly specialized retail, highly specialized restaurant and food, sit-down restaurants, things that are what we've heard are desired by many in the area. So we coupled the market assessment with a physical assessment. On the left is a broader diagram. Our study area here is in the center in the light yellow shade. Off to the left is the Cromwell Light Rail Station. Here's the former county sanitary commission property that the councilwoman mentioned is a subject of a RFP that will be discussed later on this evening. We have the town center area, Crane Highway, Ritchie Highway off to the right, and then the B&A Trail in green. If we zoom in, the image on the right just zooms in on our site a little more. Again, our project area is highlighted in yellow. We see there's a lot of green space with the GBIA Carnival site, the Town Center Plaza, the green space associated with Heritage Green, and then of course the B&A Trail. We see a lot of opportunities to tie into that network. We see some challenges that exist currently with Crane Highway and B&A Boulevard, especially with the free right turn lanes. It's a very unfriendly environment to pedestrians. And so we have some recommendations to address that. And then we see some opportunities for the gateways into the town center. It's a very distinct town center. It has good bones, especially with neighborhood, nice single family neighborhoods to the west to really build upon that framework. So some themes that we've, out of our assessment, the site is very well located with great access near the airport, major roadway networks, and also to the light rail to the left, to the west. It does lack some positive gateway images coming in from, especially from the west. The intersections, as I mentioned, not very pedestrian friendly, especially at Crane Highway and B&A Boulevard with those dedicated right turn lanes, which on our observation seem like they might be unnecessary because there's no right turn on red permitted. And a lot of times those lanes had at a red light, there was very few people in those lanes turning. So that space might be reclaimed for parking in pedestrian areas. From the property owners and businesses we talked to, there are strong sentiments for a revitalization approach that combines both improvements to some existing properties and redevelopment of others. And that will become clearer when we show the plans. One of the things that really struck us, especially from some of our out-of-town team members, was the amount of litter on the property and some of the parking lots and along the streets, the lack of trash receptacles. And really, we felt like that could be a real deterrent to investment. So addressing that should be a low-hanging fruit that can be addressed, but that's going to be very important. And then also the site is it benefits from having a public parking garage just to the east, the Town Center Plaza, the Carnival Grounds, but some of these are really underutilized assets. And we know there's, with the farmers market and the Town Center Plaza and the ice rink, there's more and more activity there. We think there could be some more opportunity in the future as well. So I'm going to go right now into the plan summary. The vision statement that we came up with based on our input from stakeholders is, and I'll just read this, Glen Burnie's Town Center will reemerge as a vibrant place for residents, workers, students, and visitors to gather in a pedestrian and bike-friendly environment. Incremental investment from the public and private sector will create a mixture of uses for new dining, shopping, and services to a variety of residential options with easy access to the Baltimore and Annapolis Trail. The result will be a safe and inviting public gathering place that provides connections among existing and future businesses, open space amenities, and surrounding neighborhoods to celebrate the Glen Burnie community. If we look at the plan, I have a plan drawing, and then I'll go through a series of 3D renderings that will be a lot easier to understand. Highlighted on the left in gray, again, is our study area. One of the first things we think is very important, it's a very large block, and you can see from the streets that are identified in black that the area to the west and most downtowns have a very fine gridded street network. Ideally, the ideal walkable block is about a 400-foot block. So we're recommending that we connect A Street, connect through the site to divide this into two smaller blocks to help with the walkability of the site. The diagram on the right is an illustrative plan. Again, this is Crane Highway going north-south and B&A Boulevard east-west. What's shown in red are new buildings, new redevelopment. So we have some infill buildings, opportunities should those property owners be interested with B and C. The gray buildings represent existing buildings. This is the existing office condo complex at Oak Lane and Greenway Street. And then the red, the one building here is we're saying a stacked townhouse. That's on the county-owned parking lot. And that would be what we could see as an initial phase because it's county-owned property. That's a project that you could start off right from the scratch, right from the beginning. The other three buildings, E, D, and F, are multifamily. It's residential over retail and office uses, so mixed use development. It's oriented to and facing the street like you would find in a downtown environment to encourage, to really emphasize that walkable street environment with parking located to the rear, parking and stormwater management integrated into that, located internally. We're showing this as three separate buildings so that it could be developed incrementally. Some property owners may not be interested in redeveloping, which is fine. Others may be interested. Some might be interested in partnering. So these could be individual, they could all be developed at one time if all the property owners are interested in working together, or they could happen incrementally. So the plan here is showing approximately 25 to 30 stacked townhouses in this area, about 110 units, whether they're apartment or condo units that are on upper floors above 39,000 square feet of retail mixed use development. We're also showing open space. While this corner parcel was not within our study area, we're showing that if there's ever plans to redevelop that property, that could be a significant open space that really becomes an important amenity for both sides of Central Avenue and the town center as a whole. The plan is not contingent upon that, however. So if that property if no changes happen to that property, our plan can still be achieved. So I think the next images will be a little more telling in the 3D graphics. So we're over the intersection of Crane Highway and Central Avenue. The B&A Trail comes down from Cromwell off to the northwest here through the site and through the intersection. So you can see here the proposed, we're showing 3-story buildings, ground floor retail with outdoor amenity space, so restaurants with outdoor dining, awnings, very active pedestrian environment, and then parking, surface parking, and stormwater management located behind. In particular, you can see how some of these outdoor dining and gathering spaces can help really activate that B&A trail. And then this is an example of how this parcel could become a significant open space that's activated by these surrounding uses. Again, the plan is not contingent on that. This is the existing memorial that's on site right now, but it's pretty much surrounded by parking, and this gives us a little more prominence and significance. This is another view where actually now Crane Highway is in the back here. We're over just to the west of the previous view, looking down on that potential open space, the B&A Trail. You get a sense of how these spaces relate to and can activate the B&A Trail. These businesses can have visibility from trail users as well as from the street. Again, lower level restaurant uses, upper floor residential. These are some examples. This is the Pinellas Trail in Dunedin, Florida. It's a small town outside of Tampa. You can see some very humble architecture that once the trail went through, it really spurred economic development. Restaurants, coffee shops, lemonade stands. This is a bike shop in the top right that also has coffee and outdoor dining adjacent to the trail. They've all recognized how valuable that trail is and leverage that. Not only do these businesses help activate the trail and provide eyes and safety on the trail, it provides amenities for trail users to stop along the way. And then you could see how then signage along the trail for businesses that are not located on the trail signage directs trail users into the town a block away to support other businesses. And you can imagine how this could work in Glen Burnie as well. All of the businesses have bike accommodations, bike racks, and really targeting that audience that could be significant. Another example is the Swamp Rabbit Trail in Travelers Rest, South Carolina. Travelers Rest is a small town outside of Greenville, South Carolina. It was several years ago, it had a very high vacancy rate. Once the trail went through, the county did an economic development study, a 3-year impact study, and showed how the number of trail users and how that usage increased business in the community. And many of the businesses similar to Dunedin, Florida, are activating, and they focus and they face onto the trail and leverage that trail audience. So we see some real opportunities in Glen Burnie. This is another view. This is over the B&A Boulevard and Crane Highway intersection, the Town Center Plaza in the bottom right, Rotary Park off to the lower left. You could see if we eliminate the right turn lane along here, we could get parallel parking on both sides of Crane Highway, additional parallel parking on B&A Boulevard, which we think is really critical to the economic success of the businesses here, and then also for the traffic calming and the pedestrian environment to provide a buffer and convenience for pedestrians. We're showing, because the parking is located behind, we're showing an alley connection that connects from Crane Highway back to that parking. That could be very important. And that could also be a very important public space that you can see in this example from Crane Highway, looking back to that surface parking in the back. We're just showing an example. A lot of communities we work in are really latching on to the food scene and the idea of community kitchens or commissary kitchens. We know Anne Arundel Community College has a culinary program. One of the things we talk about is there an opportunity that their culinary program could be a partner in activating a community kitchen here in this space. And this is an example, there could be garage doors that open up so that activity, cooking classes and other things spill out onto this alley space. And we had a little fun with this, naming it the Glen Burner. There's some real opportunities here. And then on this side, we're showing a mural actually of the Crane Highway frontage, a historic photograph. Public art is going to be very important as well to activate these spaces. This is a view looking along Crane Highway with the redevelopment here. This is across the street showing an infill opportunity on the open green lot, should that property owner ever want to infill develop that. And then you're seeing the parallel parking that adds some pedestrian buffer, street trees, planting, which are all very important. And then some of the branding that I'll talk about later in banners and street lights to brand the community. This is another street level view. This is the new street that I talked about, A Street extended, that would divide the development site into 2 blocks. Again, emphasizing that pedestrian environment, pedestrian amenities, bike racks, street furniture, uses that have outdoor dining to really activate that street frontage. And then some examples from other communities where successful downtowns have those very vibrant and active street frontage. You don't have to have a lot of space in there. And even, just having the presence of brightly colored umbrellas signals to motorists that something's going on. There's some activity here. Overhead lights can activate that space as well. This is a view along B&A Boulevard. This is another example showing infill, and would really encourage infill not to be just 1 story, but to be 2 stories, to allow some opportunity for some upper floor residential, or if it is 1 story, if the infill is just 1 story, maybe doing a taller 1 story to just be appropriate to the scale of B&A Boulevard. And then this is a ground level view of that village green, again, that may or may not happen, but we think there's some great potential for significant open space here. Another trend is for having movable furniture, flexible space that can be programmed for outdoor events, concerts, as well as daily use with the spill out from the restaurants. In addition to the proposed redevelopment, we also looked at what are some potential improvements to existing properties? And we met with some property owners to get their thoughts. Um, the county has facade improvement grants. So we're showing, and we want to show something that's attainable. So this is a view at the corner of Rotary Park, the existing sign. This property owner had invested in this facade earlier, and it expressed some interest in improving this facade to maybe pick up on this quality. So we're just showing how with paint, how that you could continue that improvement that were made in this building with the paint treatment, continuing that along this facade, and then suggesting maybe a more appropriate sign for Rotary Park. It's a wonderful park space, and the park sign right now could maybe lower and something that's more monumental for the space. We also looked at some of the existing business, long-term redevelopment. It's not going to happen overnight. So in the short term, while some of these businesses are operating, showing how they could take advantage of some facade improvements. So at the time, Cafe Bria was operating here, but it's very confusing as to which door was the business. It still had the previous convenience store sign here, so the business wasn't real prominent. So this was showing how awnings and paint colors, some improved signage could really make that business more prominent. And these concepts could be applicable to any of the existing businesses in the district. So we just picked a couple to show the examples. And then the side view of Cafe Bria, again, this is the B&A trail in the foreground. When we talked to that business owner, they got a lot of customers from trail users. They put outdoor tables, and then we're just showing how you could make that a little more visible. Maybe the town center section of the trail could be painted to be more vibrant, noticeable, get public art on some of the transformers, but just making that facade more prominent, getting some umbrellas out there so it becomes more visible to the bikers and the trail users. And just an example of how existing businesses can leverage the users of that trail. We also had a little fun doing some community branding. These are examples that you feel free to use or not use, but it was just showing that it's very important for a place to really celebrate its community brand. And for Glen Burnie, since it has such a strong automotive history along the Ritchie Highway, we played off of Arnett Muldrow came up with some of these concepts, playing off the chevron that you see with a lot of automobile dealerships with the form and the shape that we have here. Just two examples. The triangular forms represent the site itself, where a lot of streets come in at an angle, and so celebrating that. And then a tagline, "Make your path here." That could be for new businesses to make your path here. It responds to the transportation corridors that intersect here with the bike trail, the different roadways, and also the light rail to the west. And it could be for the new homeowners and businesses wanting to make their start here in Glen Burnie. And that could translate to wayfinding signage, which you think is very important. The public parking garage is underutilized, so wayfinding signage can direct visitors to that resource a little stronger, directing a monument sign, but also pedestrian-oriented wayfinding as well as vehicular-oriented wayfinding. And then that could translate into banners. And this shows how that tagline, "Make your path here," could translate to different things. Make your path to great shopping, make your path along great trails, make your path to incredible flavors, and make your path home. And then, the Improvement Association and other entities could, take this tagline and really use it to develop a marketing campaign to not only market to visitors, but to new residents, and then also market to new businesses that you want to attract. And then lastly, I'll close on, while our focus was this particular site, we think there are really some great opportunities in Town Center as a whole. The Town Center Plaza, there's been a lot of investment there. It's got great bones. This photograph to the left, it was a day last spring It was 75 degrees, and I went there and ate lunch outside. I was the only one in the plaza at the time. And so there's a real opportunity. Some of these restaurants maybe encourage, work with the restaurants to encourage tables, outdoor tables to activate this space, encourage maybe more green space. There's a lot of hard paving, not a lot of shade. So in the summer, it's a very hot space to be. This is just an example of a project that we worked on in Northern Virginia. And a lot of retail centers are really recognizing the importance of flexibility, shade structures, trees, large outdoor dining areas. And so there's some real opportunities for the town center plaza. Also the Carnival Grounds, it's a wonderful green space. The Carnival is a wonderful event. There may be some strategic tree planting that occur in there just to make it look more like a park space. And of course, that would have to be coordinated with the operators of Carnival to make sure they work together. And then lastly, the parking garage. It's a very dark facade. It faces north, so it's in shade a lot of time. So other opportunities to improve this facade with public art, some lightening up, some green infrastructure, and maybe even looking at some redevelopment of the lower levels with more windows and more eyes on the street to activate that. So our report goes into a little more detail with some examples for those, but it's something that we just wanted to put out there as part of this plan or some opportunities in the future. And then we closed with an implementation action plan. I'm not going to get into these details here other than to just say that each of the plan elements are identified in the action plan. We identify a time frame, whether it's short-term, ongoing, midterm, or long-term. We identify the primary leads in many cases in Anne Arundel County, and then key partners that they would have with that. So this can be used as a template to measure ongoing success and as the plan is implemented. And with that, I want to thank you all. This has really been a great opportunity for us and really exciting. So we'll look forward to some questions at the end of the meeting. Thank you. I will stop sharing right now.
All right. Well, you know, if we were in person right now, I think this room would be loud with applause. So I will applaud. Most of us are muted, so it's hard to do, get the real effect. But Tom, that was fantastic.
Well, thank you.
I've been texting back and forth with the councilwoman, and we're both excited. I know. I hope everybody who's listening to this is as well. I mean, what a vision that you set forth there, and
well, we did that with the partnership of the task force and the county. It was a great partnership throughout the whole process.
Yeah. So our job is to make it more than a vision, but I've got to say, I mean, there's just so much about Glen Burnie that you know, I remember you know, being at the carnival and putting people's wristbands on for hours and hours as they come in, and just everybody there. I mean, there are just so many people in the area that can potentially participate in so many things. And the tree lighting that we did was, I went to probably 10 tree lightings this Christmas season, but I won't tell you which one was my favorite, but you can guess. Great crowds of people and so much potential. I loved the way you talked about, you didn't actually say nightlife, but I think, you know, the nightlife could really take off. The integration of the trail, you know, I can just see people on the weekends flooding to this town center, coming up from Annapolis on the trail and everywhere else. And I think about anybody who is an investor and wants to, you know, I sometimes ask developers why they do what they do, and every single one of them says that it's building something beautiful that improves the quality of people's lives, and being able to drive by it later and look at what they created. And so we put all this stuff together. There's huge opportunity, and I hope others feel the same way. And I know that there's a lot of response and reaction from residents and local businesses that will be coming in the coming days and weeks. But we are now going to jump over to Chris Gross from the Concourse Group, who is going to tell us about this request for proposals for a parcel of land that's owned by the county, and what that could mean and what we're looking for.
Thanks. I'm having some issue with the video here. But if we could pull up the map of the area. A lot of what I'm going to say is going to echo what we just heard in the redevelopment planning conversation, and I'll start by saying that the concourse group that I work with is out of Annapolis. We work nationwide with federal, state, and local governments to help them leverage land that they own to accomplish their goals. And it's not too often we work on something so close to home. So it's nice to be working on this. And I was very interested to see that redevelopment presentation. I biked through this area a few months ago with a friend who's new to cycling, and we rode up from Annapolis on the trail and around the airport. And my friend was really impressed with the trail, and he's an urban planner by training, and we were looking around Glen, Burnie, and we're really sort of brainstorming and thought that the area had a lot of opportunity. And that was prior to when I started to engage on this project. So, and we did miss that cafe. We were looking for a place to eat. So the signage and all that stuff at the cafe, that was good. We probably would have stopped there. So what we're talking about now is 7409 Baltimore Annapolis Boulevard. So this is a site that's about 35 acres, but the developable portion of it is 13 acres. The county, obviously there's existing uses here. This is a former county utility wastewater headquarters, county fuel facility, maintenance garage. It's used for police training and storage right now. There's a nonprofit that leases a little bit of the office space. So at this point, the county doesn't need to continue to operate this site. It's not essential for county operations. So instead of simply selling the site on the open market to the highest bidder, and then they can do whatever they want with it, the county has chosen to instead pursue a two-step process to engage a development community to find the most qualified developer who can come in here and build a high-quality mixed-use development that's consistent with the county's vision for the site and the county's goal for the site and the larger area. So this is definitely overlaps with what we just heard in terms of redevelopment of the Glen Burnie Town Center. So just off to the left of the screen here is the Cromwell Station. So we got light rail, and then I don't think we can see the town center here, but the town center is basically just off to the right of the screen. So this parcel is kind of strategically located in between the light rail and the town center. And we could see here the existing uses on the site, and then your more typical retail development just outside the site. And I think the area along Baltimore Annapolis Boulevard, I'm trying to find what it was called, light industrial character, I think was what we heard in the previous presentation. So there is some opportunity to improve the Baltimore Annapolis Boulevard street frontage here, the connectivity to the Cromwell Station and the Annapolis Town Center. And the vision here is really for this to be a catalyst for economic revitalization of the broader Glen Burnie Town Center area. Some of the other visions and goals of the county are to protect the wetlands area, which is pretty much everything in this to the north of this picture. The parcel does extend to the north. It's pretty much everything on the parcel that's not currently developed with a parking lot or a building is areas that we want to protect. And in addition to protecting the area, we'd like to see some additional trails or other passive recreation uses in that area. So that'll add to the community, and it should tie into the existing trail network. The B&A trail is sort of, again, just off the map to the bottom and left of this picture. So there's opportunity to tie everything together. So the process that we're in right now is we've issued a request for qualifications, the first step of the process. We're very early in the process. And we've asked the development community to respond with the qualifications of their firm, and then also with a basic vision for what they could do with the site. And we asked them, we provided the county vision, the things I talked about, protecting the wetlands, advancing some of the goals in the 2040 plan, the long range plan, providing a range of housing options, and having some mix of uses. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of the visions that can't come back, or the proposals for development, are similar to what we just saw for Glen Burnie Town Center, where you've got some residential above retail. The road frontage here is kind of limited on B&A Boulevard. So what's going to happen is the request for qualifications are due February 14th. So that request is out on the street. We've got quite a bit of interest from the development community. Not sure how many responses we're going to get, but it's been widely publicized, and a lot of people have downloaded the request for qualifications, and we expect to see hopefully some really good proposals come back. What we've asked the development community to do is to show us what you can do here within the obviously there's market conditions that do constrain what can be done. So if you can't meet some component of what the county wants to see in terms of a real high quality mixed use development, provide some evidence for why that can't be accomplished in this market, because we think it can be. And so any entities that respond and can articulate a vision for the site and show that they're a qualified firm that could develop this site will be invited. The intent is to continue the process, and they'll be invited to submit a more detailed plan for the site. And the intent is to move forward and either sell the site or enter into a long-term lease to redevelop this site. Now, one of the, so that's the process. One of the key things in the document that went out to the development community is to make them aware that this doesn't occur in isolation. There is an existing community here, including the existing business community, but then also, and it's real obvious from this map, there's an existing neighborhood right next to the site. So whatever you do needs to be compatible and tie into the surrounding community. So that's one of the key things I think is important to stress with this group. And we're hopeful that we get a range of responses back, and that'll tell us what the range of things that could be built here, or what folks think can be built here, and we'll move forward with the process. And choosing a developer that can do a really good job here, and then moving forward, I think it's a good process. It gives the county a lot of leverage to make sure that how this site gets developed is consistent with the broader goals for the area, and is also acceptable to the existing residents and business community. So again, real early in the process, it's a brief introduction to what we're doing, and we'll be interested to hear questions at the end.
Thank you, Mr. Gross. This is so exciting. As both our presenters mentioned, the area of 7409 B&A has been sort of deemed light industrial, and upon getting engaged in my first term in office, it was very clear to me that it was not the best use in the middle of the town center area, in the middle of this somewhat historic, strong residential community. And I'm thrilled that this administration has saw the same potential that I saw and is willing to go through this process to, I think this project, the 7409 BNA, can be a real catalyst to further implement the larger vision, and really, as the plan states, help Glen Burnie reemerge as a really vibrant community. For those that maybe aren't as in the know, Glen Burnie was founded in 1888 as what I call the first transit-oriented community, because it was a train stop in between Baltimore and Annapolis, and a train where Ritchie Highway was a train used to go by. And from that train stop, over the decades, Glen Burnie emerged, and it has been in its heyday in many different decades. So I think I think the stars are aligning. And with that, I wanted to ask to have the overlay map brought up on the screen. So when we put our heads together and began talking real seriously about redevelopment and revitalization, it was clear that we really needed to have the right tools in the toolbox to incentivize this reemergence and revitalization. It's a very important piece of the puzzle. So in September of 2020, with a unanimous vote of the County Council, I was able to pass the Glen Burnie Sustainable Community Overlay legislation, which sort of updated our code and is a real game changer for our older commercial corridors in this mapped area. And this mapped area, when you look closely at it, it engages, it involves Cromwell Light Rail, the Town Center, Marley Station Mall, Arundel, all the way down into the Veterans Highway corridor. So it really encapsulates a lot of our shopping centers in this area that could use some revitalization. So the mapped area is key to the legislation. One of the very important components of the legislation as investors and developers come forward with potential redevelopment projects, there's a key in the very beginning that they meet in the early stages of their planning with an additional community meeting at what we call concept phase. So they're not going to have done all their permitting and all their engineering, and they're going to come to the community with a public meeting to at early stages, so that it's easier to present their ideas with 3D images and also get feedback and incorporate, most importantly, hopefully incorporate some of the community feedback before they're too far along in their project. It was one of the key points of for this legislation and this process, which I think is really important, because like we've said, we've pointed out, there's residential communities surrounding all of these areas, and there's people that live there and businesses that already exist. And we want to make sure that our redevelopment blends and incorporates the vibrant community that's already there. We're going to now turn this over to Mr. Burge with the CEO of Anne Arundel County Economic Development Corporation. Mr. Burge is going to share some ideas and some information about state level and local level incentives that are available regarding, and then we're going to get into our question and answer phase. Mr. Burge.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Pickard. Thank you for inviting me. I also want to recognize members of my team, Keisha Haith, who works, I know has worked very closely with you and with P&Z on a lot of these revitalization issues. And anything I don't know, she'll definitely be able to fill in the gaps there. And she does a lot of good work in that area. And Wes McWilliam, who's also on board, he has really good knowledge of the development arena and pretty much an encyclopedic knowledge of commercial space throughout the county. So if there's any questions, I think between the three of us, we could probably handle them. I'm going to touch on a few programs that we have through AAEDC and also with the state, partnering with them. One of the most important ones as pertains to Glen Burnie is the Arundel Community Reinvestment Fund, which is loans up to $100,000 for renovations and upgrades to buildings, building exteriors. And this is a 0% interest loan. Over the past 3 years, AAEDC has closed 4 ACR loans in Glen Burnie for about $314,000. So that's money going right into the economy to help improve the buildings and the facades around Glen Burnie. We have the Architect on Call program, which not many people know about, but it's 15 hours or $1,500 of free professional architectural services provided by a full service architectural firm with experience in commercial revitalization. And another program we have is the Community Revitalization Tax Credit, which is a property tax credit for up to 10 years equal to the incremental increase in real property tax assessment for improvements of at least $100,000 in assessed value. So we have some programs that can help in this area. I would also like to call attention to a very successful program that was initiated by the state, Project Restore, which pumped a lot of money into communities throughout the state, which helped businesses that were moving into properties that have been vacant for over 6 months. This was such a huge success and completely oversubscribed out of the gate that they are running the program again. We're investigating ways to, even further incentivize that to get our businesses to move into these properties where instead of building from scratch in some places, hopefully get them to move into existing vacant properties. And finally, I'd like to say that, as you know, as many of our businesses throughout the county know, that in the last, dear God, it's been almost 2 years now since the pandemic hit. We've been very, very busy at AAEDC providing grants to businesses. Through that time in Glen Burnie, we have awarded 244 grants to businesses worth about $3.6 million. So that's money going right to the businesses. I can tell you from the testimonials, a lot of these grants have kept them literally in business, not just prolonged them, but actually kept them afloat. So we're very proud of that work. And again, those are just some of the programs we have. If anybody has any questions about our programs, you can go to our website, aaedc.org. And a lot of these programs that I mentioned and many others are there. They're very descriptive. And the thing I like about the pages for each of these programs, it has the picture and contact information for the person you'll work with on that. So you'll have a very human touch on all these programs. So we look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Mr. Burge, and thank your team. They're vital to the county and the work that they do. I know they work very hands-on with business owners, and they've certainly been a fantastic asset to the Glen Burnie Revitalization Implementation Task Force over the last couple of years as we've been working together. So thank you. Mr. County Executive, did you have anything you wanted to say before we launched into question and answers from our attendees? Was that a no? Are you muted? Okay, so we're gonna, for those in attendance, if you have questions, we have quite a pretty awesome panel to answer them. So if you use the raise hand function on your screen, I will know that you are ready to ask a question. I think I can figure it out. Let's see. We have a lot of attendees to get through here. I'm going through the list. I will get to see who's got a question. Excuse me.
There's two at the top.
Yep. Mr. Luis Lucchini has a question.
Yes, hi. Thank you everybody for this awesome presentation. It's really exciting to see this plan and to get to be a part of something that's pretty transformative to our community. I had a question to our first panelist about the proposed plan. We were, you guys were talking a lot about walkability, bike friendliness, and those are all things that I very much appreciate. I'm for absolutely, but we didn't really see any new proposed bike paths or anything like that. Instead, I mean, one thing that I noticed was the a big parking lot in the middle of what could be additional retail space, additional cafes, or community gathering areas. Did you recommend that because of well, I mean, what was the reasoning? Is there a parking minimum to the community? Is there something like that that's making us go that way instead of something more more community space or whatnot?
Yeah, and I can go ahead and answer that. A good question. I mean, one of our charges was to have a realistic plan, and if we want to attract some restaurant and retail businesses, certainly, and mix that with residential, we do need to meet some parking requirements. And based on the square footage that we were showing, we have parking that is typically in demand for those uses. Now, ideally, as the actual plan is developed, if there's opportunities to incorporate less parking, that would be great, because there is the parking garage that is underutilized. But we need to make it market attractive to a developer who can make it marketable. In terms of the bike facilities, what we did talk about in the report, making the adjacent streets more bike friendly. One of the things in reducing getting rid of some of the free right turn lanes, we showed that capturing with parking with parallel on-street parking, but that could also be explored for some bike lanes incorporated in place of some of the on-street parking. But certainly bike amenities, bike racks, and covered bike parking for commuters as part of the building structure would be very important as well. We do, I might add one thing, that we do have also, there'll be a fairly significant stormwater management requirement too. So some of that parking area that we've shown in the back will have to incorporate parking stormwater management. So the area includes green space, that's stormwater management, but it could also be, there could be interpretive and educational opportunities. That could be amenity, not just a functional aspect.
Thank you, Tom. Next, we have a question from Mr. Terry Allen.
Hi, this is Pastor Terry Allen. Well, we right now we leased in 7409. We are located at building A. Question is, with this new development, we don't, we as a church and a nonprofit, we service most of the community in that area where the residentials are areas and the people there. We, as a church, we want to know what the timeline is. If there are any opportunities to relocate our nonprofit and church so we can still be in that area, because it's such a great need of what we do because of the pandemic and a lot of things that people need as far as community in that time in that area. So even though there's development that may be going on in the future, we at this point in time, we don't know the timeline and continue to do what we still do, whether any opportunities or any development for the people in the area, or even any space that's used back there to continue to do or to relocate in the Glen area.
Thank you, Pastor Allen. Mr. Power or Mr. Pittman, did you want to talk to that question?
Well, let me, the first thing I would want to say, and hello, Terry, it's good to see you. We spoke about this a couple of weeks ago. We do appreciate the work that you do and will want to help you in any way that we can to relocate when the time comes. But the first question is timeline. And I don't have a good answer to that. I know these things take a long time. Matt, do you or anybody else have any ballpark of the soonest that there would actually be the need to vacate the property?
I think we're still looking at quite a long time to vacate the property. It'll be the process itself. We have 2 steps going on with the statement of qualifications and then the RFP. And so it would be years before we needed to vacate tenants. And there are lots of uses on the property that could be a mix of different uses. So we'll certainly work with all the existing tenants to make sure that everyone is taken care of and considered as the process plays out.
So stay in touch. I'm sure you will.
Thank you, gentlemen. The next question I have, Mr. Kevin Kim has his hand raised.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can.
Hello?
We can hear you.
Oh, yes, we can.
We can hear you, sir.
Oh, sorry, I cannot hear. Just a second. Speaker. Okay, hello?
We can hear you, sir. Can you hear us?
Oh, okay, I can hear you. Thank you. Hi, yeah, my name is Kevin Kim. Actually, my Korean name is Seungwon Kim. Anyway, yeah, you know what? I'm a landlord. My building, I guess, located at the Crane Highway across the Central Avenue. You know that in the presentation, you know, there is a Cafe Vira. You show us, and that Cafe Vira belongs to our building. So I'm really wants to cooperate with to you know, make a new renovation for this. So the question is 2 things, like the building that belongs to Cafe Vira, how can you know, how can he make a building with using funding like that? And about building E, we own only land, not the building. So I guess building E, just you know, the portion of the land we owned. So in that case, how can we? I mean, how does it work to make building E? That's the question.
Sure. So in the plan that that we saw introduced tonight, it's just a vision, and it does for it or something like it to come to fruition, there is a process that would have to be undertaken with both county property and privately owned property would have to be assembled in a way. So it's not it's not a simple process. But if you have questions regarding your own building and the property you own and how it can be incorporated into a redevelopment plan, I would highly recommend being in touch with economic development. I don't know if Mr. Burge or Mr. McQuillam want to chime in regarding how to engage with your office.
Yeah, we're happy to work with you. We can get in touch with you and talk about any plans that you might have and any funding sources, things like that. We're happy to reach out and get in touch. We'll do that after this meeting.
And we'll put contact information in the chat box so you can get a hold of us, and we'll get in touch with you and talk about these issues.
Thank you, gentlemen. The next question I have is Miss Elizabeth Kikaris. I hope I've said your name right.
Hi, yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. My husband and I are first-time homeowners in Glen, Burnie, so I think we're exactly the target market that Thomas was speaking about in his presentation. We were definitely attracted to the area with, the relative affordable cost of housing in comparison to the surrounding areas. And we're, as you know, like Glen Burnie has been around since 1888, as you mentioned, and we're just kind of excited about the prospect of how the community might be revitalized. So it's awesome to hear what's going on. I have two questions. One is to get a better understanding of how the county is incentivizing the development of the town center. I know you mentioned some private partnerships and was just wondering, what the timeline and kind of initial conversations around that have been. And then secondly, I understand that the county has recently signed legislation around project labor agreements and prevailing wage, and was just wondering if the county has any intentions of or plans to enforce labor requirements as a part of these projects.
Oh, very good questions. So there's a couple things happening that I can speak to. One is when you talk about the incentives, the Glen Burnie Sustainable Community Overlay, which is the legislation that was passed to incentivize redevelopment, allows for that assembling of properties of maybe different zoning types. That also it breaks down some barriers with different bulk regulations and things. Also puts in some guardrails regarding school APFO and things like that. So there are just some basic planning and zoning kind of incentives built into the overlay that don't exist outside of the overlay. Where the county owns property and could potentially, where the county is putting its own property up for redevelopment, that will go through a formal process, but that will be done by the private sector. Then where there's in the target study area where there's both private property and abutting county property, that remains to be seen how that plays out with investors engaging with the county, whether the county decides to surplus the county-owned property and assemble it with a private venture. Those are all things that are on the table. The county has passed prevailing wage legislation that is in regards to projects that are funded by the county. So anything in our CIP over a certain limit, those projects have to adhere to prevailing wage legislation. It does not apply to private investment and private development. Did I answer your questions? I think I answered your questions without passing it off to an expert on the panel. Anyone else want to chime in on her question? Earn your keep today. Mr. Groves, Mr. Bird, Mr. County Executive. No, I covered it. All
I
right.
think you got it. Yeah.
Okay. I don't see any more hands raised. We did have a question in the chat. Or no, it was just a comment from Mr. Corrin about walkable, bikeable areas.
I see the hand raised.
Oh, there's a hand raised. Oh, Mr. Marston, how are you, sir? You may ask your question if you unmute yourself.
Sorry, I'm realized I was muted. Excuse me. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to this group. I am following activities at the state that deal with energy efficiency and climate change. I'm also following that at the national level. This is a 10-year plan. What incentives will you put before your developers to encourage them to build beyond the code? And about the time this starts, we will be in the 21 code. I don't think this will reach permit time in 25, 26, when we'll probably be in the 24 code. So how will you incentivize people to look at building zero energy structure, look at incentivizing solar for recharging vehicles in that parking space, look at collecting rainwater off the building roofs with living roof systems, and demonstrating a concept of we can live in sustainable housing and communities and show it to the community. This is a very old community. This should take a leading position to say, here's how we do it. I will end there. I look forward to your answers.
Mr. Marston, I can always count on you for a challenging question. Mr. County Executive, did you want to take a crack at that one?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking my language. I think, though, that we have to treat this development, to the extent that it's private development, like other private development. I think hopefully within 10 years or hopefully sooner than that, we will have a greener building code, and that. But I think that if we're trying to incentivize and move this quicker, we're probably less inclined to add additional regulation to it. Some of the overlay was actually reducing some regulation to draw developers in. Now, you wouldn't think that developers would run away from additional regulation on the environment, and hopefully we can convince them to do green roofs and solar panels and improve stormwater and all of those things that you're talking about, and definitely charging stations. I mean, the charging stations, I think, I agree. All new development in these parking lots should have charging stations, and we may well be able to pull that off especially the one that is parking on county-owned land. We're putting these charging stations in all over on county-owned land. So I suspect that will happen. I suspect it'll be happening in a lot of places. But I don't know that this is going to be a place where we're going to have a separate set of development regulations that's kind of more stringent. But I hope you'll work with us on doing it countywide.
If I could add one thing, there's actually an existing financing program that we help promote. We don't really run it. We work through the entity that administers it. It's called the PACE program. And what it allows is for industrial usage of electricity to put in more efficient electricity. And the incentive comes from the costs can be passed through on your property taxes. So there's no money down, and you can spread the payments out for up to 20 years. So it helps you make energy improvements that way. And we try to work with businesses, don't work with as many as we want, but it's certainly an opportunity that's out there for businesses to be more energy efficient.
And I would also add that we have a parking garage that you probably know about, and Christina Anderson is here listening in and does central services for the county and is responsible for adding a lot of these charging stations. And I suspect that in the back of her mind, she's thinking, yeah, there will be charging stations in that parking garage, hopefully sooner rather than later. And maybe we can do additional things there as well.
Well, we also had, I recently had a nice briefing with our new transportation director, Mr. Sam Sneed, and we spoke about bike share and some of the things, the cool things you see in the Annapolis, downtown Annapolis area that could easily be replicated up in the Glen Burnie Town Center, especially with the proximity to the trail and things like that. But I do think over time we'll be implementing and working on a greener building code, as the county executive said, but we also know that redevelopment is not easy. So piling on regulation probably just stymies some of it. So hopefully there'll be some incentive to create more sustainable buildings and greener buildings, just because it's the cool thing to do and the market is willing to accept it. So we have one more question I see from Mr. Luis Lucchini. Mr. Lucchini, do you have another question, or is this your hand still up?
No, it's a follow-up question actually. How do you guys plan on opening those lines of communications with some of the landlords who are not as involved as the one that just asked the question previously? Because we see a lot of property in that development area that just doesn't seem to be receiving any love at all, right? How do you guys plan on reaching out to those people and getting buy-in from more of the landlords?
Sure, that's a great question. And when we started this process, this is a somewhat of a culmination of about 2 years work, but we had a event that launched the conversation of revitalization in October 2019. And in order to encourage small business owners and landlords to come out, Beth Nowell and I literally went door to door with flyers to local businesses. And then when the revitalization plan, the study team started, we the Office of Planning and Zoning and the group, and I'm going to let Tom speak more about how they engage the business community, but we've reached out to commercial business owners. And then I also work with economic development, and Mr. McQuillam and I can often be found meeting with different local business owners about their activities and their properties that they own. But Tom, you want to speak a little bit about how y'all engaged local businesses during the process?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I think that's a great question. We had one of the things we did as part of the market study and a zip code survey, we went door to door and talked to individual businesses to get them to participate in the zip code survey. And then there was an opportunity to talk about the plan and some of the opportunities. A lot of them did participate. We also, at the very beginning of the process, Lynn Miller had organized and got in touch with several of the property owners who we did meet with. But you're absolutely right. We haven't met with, there's a lot more property owners and businesses we would have loved to have been engaged in the process. And that's not too unusual. Like a lot of times, businesses and property owners want to be involved right up front from the beginning. Others, now that there's a kind of a concept and some ideas in place, that can be used the county can use that as a tool to reach out to property owners and businesses, say, hey, look at some of the potential here, would like to engage you. And that was actually one of the recommendations in the plan for implementation, is to really work out a strategy to intentionally reach out to more of the property owners and engage them going forward.
Thank you, Tom. I would just add that we have a vibrant Chamber of Commerce that represents this area, and obviously economic development is involved with many business owners in the area. And I would, encourage. We'll certainly be doing more both coordinated and one-on-one kind of communications as we work through this plan. I envision probably speaking with the chamber at some point, and economic development is always involved in local businesses. But if you know of a local business, or if you are a small business owner and want to be engaged and learn more about how you can improve your building facade and be a part of the solution, we can certainly help be in touch with, I'll give a shout out to both the Chamber of Commerce and Economic Development. I think those are we have one more question. Excuse me. We have one more question, and then we really do have to wind it up here. Josette Markline.
Yes, hi, thank you. I had put my questions in the chat, but I'll just read them. I do live in the community here. We've lived here for about 7 years. So I just wanted to ask the county regarding the property that you own along B&A Boulevard. I just wanted to say, I hope that you strongly consider the need for more green space to combat climate change. And then because the Sawmill Creek runs along that property, will you be doing any work to improve the buffer along that creek before you throw up your hands and let a development company come in and do whatever they please? Because you still own the property and have control over it, I'm hoping that you will maybe get rid of some of that impervious cover and improve the green space there, at least along the waterway, if not more of that property. And I also had one more question or opinion that a lot of people think is unpopular, but I think that low-income housing should also be included in that development that the Anne Arundel County owns, because revitalization always impacts minority and low-income residents who are already struggling to afford living in this area. And because it's within walking distance of the light rail, it would be more beneficial to those low-income and minority residents who need public transportation.
Go ahead. I'll jump in on that one when you're done. Go ahead.
Sure. So, Ms. Markline, your comments are extremely welcome and very powerful, actually, both for considering affordable housing, sustainable living, and our environment. So I really want to thank you for being an advocate for both. And you and I can be good friends, I think. So I'm going to let the county executive take it from here.
Well, one of the great things about the fact that we own land, as you say, and that we're doing a request for proposals, or a request first for qualifications and then proposals, is that we get to pick the one that meets what we consider the public good more than any of the others. And one of those is affordability of the housing. And then on the stormwater and the runoff and the green space there, that's often one of the benefits of redevelopment, is that when that was built, stormwater regulations probably hardly existed. I don't know how long ago it's been built, but I suspect that there's a lot of bad stuff flowing into that creek off of that site. And I will guarantee you that what goes in there will do a much better job, will be much more environmentally responsible. But I hear you in that that includes having green space, because there's nothing better than soil and trees and plants to absorb water. That's how good modern stormwater management is done. So stay tuned. But thanks for the comments.
It looks like you got quite a bit of support in the chat for that comment as well. So that's good to see. Looks like the group's fairly well on board with that. And I will say that both of those things are included in the request that went out to developers. And both of those things I won't say that affordable housing is a requirement, but it's certainly part of the county vision for the site. And it's one of the things that developers will be judged on. And then protecting the creek is an absolute must. So whatever development plan goes forward, as far as cleaning up the site in general, I'm not sure if that what will fall on the county versus the developer that ultimately develops the site, but making sure the site's cleaned up and the creek is protected are absolutely part of the plan going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Gross. That's really helpful for folks to understand. That is the benefit of doing the process the way we're doing it, rather than the county just surplusing it to the free market. I believe those are the last of our questions. I want to take a moment to thank the task force again. I want to thank Miss Lynn Miller, who has worked tirelessly to support this effort. I want to make sure I thank Miss Beth Nowell, who not only is the executive director of the Chamber of Commerce, but also currently chairs the task force. And then, of course, our very dedicated community leaders, Beth Behagen and Barb Muller from GBIA, who have been our sidekicks from the very first tour of downtown Glen Burnie, and have been along the ride, and their support and input is invaluable to the process. So I'm going to just thank our consultants who have joined us tonight, which is extremely valuable to this conversation. And I'm going to then turn it over to Mr. County Executive for his final statements before we say goodnight.
I got very little to add other than that I am very enthusiastic, and I really want to thank the task force that's been working on this. We're going to continue to keep you engaged, and I want to give a huge shout out to your county council representative, Allison Pickard, who has really, this is her brainchild, this is her creation. I can't imagine anybody having pulled off what she's pulled off so far. And I can guarantee you that as long as I'm in this job and she's in that job, that this is a plan that is not going to sit on the shelf. It's going to move forward and it's going to become reality. Have a great evening.
Thanks, Mr. County Executive. It's a great collaboration. Good night, everybody.